Stocks, docks and barrels. This morning's Big Business Recap.
Big Business Recap indeed is starting June 1, 2023. The United Arab Emirates is going to have a corporate tax on taxable profits as well. So the taxable income is going to be the profits that a company is going to be making. Now we're going to break it down for you. I know a lot of you have questions. You've texted in those questions as well. To get a better understanding, we have Mr. Vijay Valecha, who is the Chief Investment Officer at Century Financial, joining us this morning. A very good morning to you, Vijay.
Very good morning to you as well.
Well, great to hear from you. Now, let's break it down and let's digest the story a little bit more. Corporate tax expected. Some people say it was expected. Maybe came a lot sooner than they expected. Are you surprised? And what's the situation with the corporate tax? Break it down for us.
Actually, quite surprised with the number that's come in, because we were actually expecting 15% to come in as the corporate tax. So it's actually quite a pleasant surprise. 9% is actually lower than any other country in the world. So that's a really good sign.
That's great news. But for those companies now, because when they look at the article and the announcement that was made, said your taxable income is going to, if it's above 375,000 a year, then you're going to be eligible to pay taxes, and people started assuming that's the same bracket as what they have to file their VAT as well. So, what does the new figure say, and who is eligible to pay those taxes? If a restaurant, for example, in Muwailah is making 100,000 dirhams as profits a year, and do they have to pay taxes? What's the rule at the moment?
Absolutely not. So it's very different from VAT. VAT is a value-added tax which is actually taxed on your revenues and not on your profits. This is actually a tax which is actually profitable. So only if you're making a profit of more than 375,000 dirhams is when you're actually paying the taxes. So let's say a restaurant actually makes a net profit of 100,000 dirhams per year. They don't really have to pay taxes.
Yeah, and Vijay, I have an interesting question about that as well, especially the threshold for taxation being 375,000. Do you think for small businesses it's a kind of a low threshold for them? Do you think it could adversely affect those businesses, the small ones?
The threshold definitely is much lower than we anticipated. We actually expected to come in at $1 million, not at $100,000. But yes, I think that will be revised very soon, because I think that's a very small threshold.
Yeah.
And how should companies really have to start preparing for the corporate tax routine?
It's not going to be very difficult, because they're trying to keep minimum compliance. So they're not actually doing what other countries do to have quarterly audited statements. They're just asking for one audited statement for the entire year. So it shouldn't be very difficult. But yes, companies will have to get their statements audited, which was also the case with VAT.
Now, let's say as an employee, an average person driving into work thinking, oh no, in 2023 my employer is going to have to pay a hefty sum, for example, a 9% as they, it's just a general goosebumps kind of a moment, isn't it? So do they think, or should they be concerned that their bonuses, which used to be from the profits that a company makes, do you think
will be cut down?
Is it goodbye bonuses?
Not really. So actually what happens is there's initial hiccups, of course. The similar hiccups we had when VAT was also introduced. We might have one tough year, but overall it actually will bring in much more business to the UAE, and that will actually overcome the losses that we are facing from the 9% taxes.
Mm-hmm. And what do we know about how it will affect the free zone companies in particular?
So currently they are saying the free zones will not be taxed, but certain industries in the free zones definitely will be taxed. We still are waiting for more clarification on that.
Because they say that it's mainly if you are conducting businesses with mainland. So if you can elaborate what that means. Does that mean that if they're dealing with a company, for example, in DMCC and Safe Zone or wherever, does it still apply for them?
So as of now, there is no corporate taxes for anybody on a free zone. So whether it's DMCC or a JAVSA or a DIFC will not be taxed at all. And they'll continue to be completely tax-free as they were earlier.
And could you also note or elaborate on how this compares to what other countries are doing with corporate tax? You've noted it's the lowest we've seen. Can you also bring that into more perspective?
Absolutely. So something like a Saudi Arabia charges 20%, also 15% VAT. We have Qatar charging 10%. We have Oman charging 10% as well. Pretty much Hong Kong, Singapore, they all charge 14%. So actually UAE is one of the lowest in the world.
That's great to see. But it comes at a very interesting time, doesn't it? Because when we saw the VAT being implemented, we saw the oil prices were low. But this time the oil prices are decent at the moment. But are we surprised with the timings, or was this just going to happen, especially considering the higher oil prices at the moment?
I think what UAE is trying to do is to bring stability in the budgets so that, they're not oil price dependent. And that's, I think, the best move that they can do. Oil prices can be up today and can be down next year. It's honestly anybody's guess. So, trying to get into an economy which is not oil dependent is the smartest thing to do. And I think UAE is doing a really good move at that.
That's good to hear. Now, lastly, if we were to conclude and expect, the expectations, because you mentioned that the threshold is a little bit lower. How is this going to be a smooth transition when it comes to June 1, 2023? I know it's still early days, but when it comes to the deadline, we all like doing things at last minutes here in the country. But what would happen then? Are we expecting a smooth transition?
No, honestly, I'm expecting quite a lot of chaos, quite a lot of panic, because people will be ready only on May 30th.
Yeah.
Till then, everybody will be pretty much forgetting about this news next year. So yes, there will be panic at that time, but it will take 6 months for it to settle down, and by the end of next year, everybody would have settled down.
I'm sure all the tax advisors are now getting their LinkedIn's and CVs polished because this is going to be 2023 is going to be their year for sure.
It's really good for CAs for sure.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Vijay, and it was great to get your opinions and a bit of a breakdown for all the businesses as well to understand the corporate tax. And we look forward to welcoming you into the studios at some point soon as well.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. This was Vijay Valecha, the Chief Investment Officer at Century Financial.